Welcome, friend, to Life and Liberty Radio. I'm David Householder, here to encourage your pursuit of happiness. You and I are partners, exploring our shared spiritual journeys. Together, we're dreaming and working for a free society. Tell others today about our adventure in faith and freedom. So breathe in, open your mind, lift up your spirit. Let's get started. This is part 2 in a series on the State of the Union address. And I'm going through the State of the Union, line by line, and walking through and making a case as to why the entire premise of the State of the Union is incorrect. The entire premise is basically this, that central planning will fix our problems. And I am a firm believer that that's the opposite of what we need to do. Now, you can like the president, you can like his tone, you can say, well, hey, what he said made kind of a lot of sense. And the truth is, if you receive the assumptions and if you assume the assumptions that he does, you're going to be fine. But it's like having a compass where the needle's pointing a different way. Sure, you're following it, that's what it says, but it's not pointing true north. True north is the truth. And the truth is this, that centralized planning never works as well as letting things go. A free society will figure things out better than central planning. And the differences between North Korea, central planning to the max, and Hong Kong, which is laissez-faire, let it roll to the max. Now, which of those two places would you rather live? In Hong Kong, people live longer than they do in the United States. They have incredible upward mobility. It's a total meritocracy. And healthcare and everything else, food, none of it's regulated at all. And it seems to work. This is why we need to pay attention to the truth that the Founding Fathers understood, that a free society will work better than a centrally planned society. It is decided, America is decidedly anti-feudal, Feudal, anti-medieval, the idea of the lord of the manor taking care of everyone, and then the fiefs and the serfs doing what the lord of the manor says. So we don't want to move in that direction, and President Obama wants to move us in that direction. He believes that central planning is the answer. So we're going to look at the State of the Union, and we're going to look at it very carefully. First thing he says is sequestration is a really bad deal. What is sequestration? Sequestration, that's the required cuts that are coming up in just a few weeks. So in other words, if Congress doesn't reach a deal, the cuts happen arbitrarily across the board. And he says in the State of the Union, these sudden, harsh, arbitrary cuts would jeopardize our military readiness. They devastate priorities like education, energy, and medical research. They would certainly slow our recovery and cost us hundreds of thousands of jobs. So he's sounding the alarm. Sequestration, the sequester, is a really bad idea. But the truth is, he signed it in the first place, and Congress put it together. It was a way of forcing Congress to deal with some cuts. They weren't able to. So this is the penalty. This is what we have to go through with. And the truth is, the cuts have to be arbitrary. Because the minute they start going line by line through all the different things to cut, nobody's going to want to cut anything. Most Americans are for much less spending by the federal government. But then you ask them, would you like to cut military? No. Would you like to cut Social Security? No. Would you like to cut Medicare? No. Well, those three things make up most of the budget. You can't cut the budget without cutting those things. Well, let's cut foreign aid. Well, that's almost none of the budget, by the way. A trickle. I doubt it's 1%. So you have to look at the big stuff. The cuts have to be arbitrary. Otherwise, line by line, there's always an objection. Now you may say, well, defense doesn't, we can't cut defense. I agree, we need better defense. Yes, we do. But we might want to look at our foreign policy. Nobody questions that we should have military everywhere, or that the president says that we should be the anchor of defense everywhere in the world, in every corner. Who wants that? Do we really want to be the police of the world? The truth is, the founding fathers wanted us to be the Minutemen, not the Redcoats, not the Redcoats. We've become the Redcoats 2.0. We're all over the world, meddling in business we don't understand, putting our hand in the garbage disposal while it's running. Massive civil war going on throughout the entire Middle East between the authoritarian military people and the Islamist extremists. So it's like, which side do you choose? They're both bad, but we keep choosing one or the other, and we're not consistent. We choose the military authoritarians in Mali, and we choose the Islamists in Syria. What's with that? We have no idea what we're doing over there. We continue to make enemies. And it's like heading for every hornet's nest in the forest and whacking it with a stick. And if they sting us, we whack it harder. We need to get out of these countries. It's none of our business. None of our business. We don't need to grab a sleeping dog by the ears and see if it bites. We do this all the time. The founding fathers warned us against entangling military alliances. I believe in a strong defense, but the operative word is defense. If we're all over the world with bases everywhere, dropping drones on everyone's heads, stationing military in countries where they don't want us to be there, it's not going to work. We have to question the entire policy. And I think we should just be good neighbors with people. Good fences make good neighbors, and we don't set up camp in someone's backyard. It never goes well. And we don't tell people what to do. Nobody wants to be told what to do. The truth is, the reason we have enemies is we make them. There's no reason for people to bother America just because. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They got bigger fish to fry. The reason people hate America is because of what we're doing around the world. If we behaved, is anyone mad at Canada? No. Why? Canadians basically kind of mind their own business, and things are going pretty well in Canada, by the way. So we really do need to pull back and defend this country. We could be much safer for a fraction of the cost. Well, then he goes on. This sequestration is terrible, he says. And he says, Medicare, though, must embrace the need for modest reforms. Otherwise, our retirement programs will crowd out investments we need for our children and jeopardize the promise of a secure retirement for future generations. Well, maybe he thinks that Medicare needs modest reforms, but the truth is, Medicare needs a total workover. The idea that we should give free medical care to one of the wealthiest generations ever produced in the human race and transfer wealth from poor young people to wealthy older people. And that's really how the redistribution of wealth ends up happening. We need to stop that. I mean, think about it. Redistribution of wealth. Watts in Los Angeles, poor neighborhood. They pay sales tax on everything. It goes to subsidize the universities like Berkeley and UCLA, where the privileged kids go. So we've got transfer of wealth, sure, but it goes the wrong way. And I believe in redistribution of wealth, but it should be voluntary. It's called charity. It's called relational. It's called a conscience thing. Anytime you put a gun to someone's head and say, hey, share, it's not the same. It loses something. So the Medicare thing, it needs to be big. And I believe in taking care of grandmas in trailers in Florida who don't have any money. I'm all for that. We're all for that. But listen, the idea that a millionaire should get a Social Security check and free medical care when we've got $16 billion plus in debt is absurd, and it has to end. So we need more than modest cuts. And he says, here we won't grow the middle class by shifting the cost of health care or college onto families that are already struggling, or by forcing communities to lay off more teachers, cops, and firefighters. Well, first of all, with teachers, I don't think we should have public education. I know that sounds crazy. I come out of a public education family. My grandfather was the superintendent of schools in Ketchikan, Alaska. My mother is a first grade teacher, and I believe in education. But I believe we have outgrown our public education system just as we've outgrown the post office and some other things. It's ridiculous. It really is. We need to just get the government out of education altogether and let people compete for education. And we'd have all kinds of fresh ideas. There's no way we can fix our educational system because it's a coercive monopoly. And coercive monopolies are never incentivized to excellence. They just aren't. It's impossible. It cannot be reformed. The only way to get excellence is through competition. And there has to be fair competition. It's not fair right now. Well, yeah, send your kids to a private school. Sure, but the public schools have a $10,000 per student head start. How are you supposed to catch up with that? I have to pay property taxes, but also, which goes to the schools, which also, if I want to send my kid to a private school, I got to pay extra. That is not fair competition. That is a coercive monopoly. And the government doesn't protect us from monopolies. It foists them on us. This is your host, David Householder. Say if you're ever in Southern California, we invite you to come and join us personally at Robinwood Church in Huntington Beach. You can find us at robinwoodchurch.com. We're a unique spiritual community with worldwide influence. Come join us. Cops. Why do we have so many cops? Because we have the war on drugs, which is one of the legacies of Woodrow Wilson with the Harrison Act, when the United States decided in 1913 that we can't be responsible for what we put in our bodies. The government has to protect us from that. Well, the truth is, what we put in our bodies is our own business. I drank coffee this morning. That's my decision. I don't smoke, but if it was, it would be my decision. People, we have to let people choose what they eat. You don't go to a restaurant and tell people what to eat. Choice of what you drink, what you eat, what you put in your body, what drugs you choose to use is up to you. But no, we've decided we have a war on drugs. Well, how's that working for us now? We've spent $1 trillion, and drugs are more plentiful and more available than they were before the war on drugs. We should treat drug abuse as we treat alcoholism, like a disease, not as a crime. Our jails are full of people doing that. And you know what? If we ended the war on drugs, we'd end the gang warfare. What finances gangs? That would be drug distribution. I'm kind of in favor of putting them out of business. Prohibition doesn't work. It didn't work with alcohol, won't work with drugs. Time to end it. Long past time to end it. And firefighters' truth is, it's just not a big expense. It's the police and the teachers that we need to work on. And we need teachers, but teachers should be in private organizations that compete. And cops, well, we need about half of them. And if we had ended the war on drugs, that's exactly what we need. Most Americans, Obama says, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, understand that we can't just cut our way to prosperity. Well, why not? That's what you and I would have to do. If you were spending too much, if you overspent at Christmas last year, would the solution be a balanced approach? To spend a little bit more and also cut? Of course not. No, you would cut. You would cut your way back to prosperity. There's only one way to do it. You can't spend and cut your way to prosperity. They know, says the president, that broad-based economic growth requires a balanced approach to deficit reduction. Now, that's pure sophistry. Pure sophistry. When you say a balanced approach, the alternative is unbalanced. No, I want unbalanced. It's ridiculous. If you ask someone on the street, do you prefer a balanced approach? Everyone's going to say yes to whatever you say, whatever the topic. Of course, we want a balanced approach. But his definition of balanced approach is we're running out of money. We've spent too much. So we need to both spend more and cut. What world does that work in? Of course we can cut our way to prosperity. When you spend too much, there's one solution. Spend less. It's that simple. That simple. Then he goes on to talk about the Affordable Care Act and how it's slowing the growth of health care costs. More sophistry. Slowing the growth of health care costs. Now, we were promised that Obamacare would lower health care costs. Would you please contact me at Liberty House, Liberty Hous, on Twitter, and tell me if your healthcare costs have gone down. I have not found one person. You would be shocked if you knew how much I'm paying in healthcare. You'd be absolutely shocked because I'm self-employed. It's unbelievable. And it's going up, 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 way past the rate of inflation. And listen to the way he phrases it. The Affordable Care Act is helping to slow the growth. In other words, not causing, but helping to slow the growth. In other words, it might be that it's not growing quite as fast. Well, the reason it's growing is we have juntas in each state, in all 50 states. We have the state government in charge of regulating the insurance companies. Oh, we better regulate them because they'll mess with us. Well, no, they won't. The regulations are massive. And so only a handful of companies in each state can meet those requirements because it's complicated. You need a huge bureaucracy. So only a handful of insurance companies exist in each state, and they're in collusion with each state government. And each state government has a maze of regulations. And those regulations limit competition because no other companies can take part. And companies from out of state can't take part because no company could handle two sets of regulations. It's just impossible bureaucratically. So you end up with a functional monopoly in every state, which is what you have. If you don't like this, there's a handful of other ones if you want to get insurance. And they're all in collusion with each other. And guess what? They set rates. You worry about gas companies setting rates. Look at this. If there was no regulation of insurance, you would have 20 choices. And there would be one company that specialized in people just like you. Let's say you're a single mom who's a school teacher. There would be a company that would focus on single moms who are school teachers. And they would meet the needs of that population group. And if anyone was uninsured, there would be a new company that would form and take care of that. Happens in technology, happens with cell phones, happens with everything. It would happen with insurance. We have to get the government out of healthcare, and we have to do it now. If you're less than 50 years old, you've never seen free market healthcare because it's been a mess since the early 60s, since these juntas were formed. It's not more affordable for anyone. The reforms I'm proposing, Obama says, will go even further. We'll reduce taxpayer subsidies to prescription drug companies and ask more from the wealthiest seniors. The drug companies and the FDA, the worst corruption possible, cronyism at the highest level. Taxpayer subsidies to prescription drug companies. It's not the problem. The problem is that the federal government and the FDA and the drug companies, the pharmaceuticals, are in the same kind of league as the state governments and the insurance companies. And there's huge corruption at the highest levels as to which drug gets approved, and some horrible drugs have been approved, and some great drugs are still not, because we can't be trusted to decide which one's working. Go to Hong Kong, where it's not regulated at all, and people live longer than we do. Think about that. Basically, what I'm saying is this, in a nutshell. The truth is, central planning will make things worse. A free society will make things better. The president is bringing us through door number 1. I'm proposing door number 2. Stay tuned as we continue every day with an installment on the State of the Union. Well, that's all for today on Life and Liberty Radio. Thanks so much for sharing this part of your spiritual journey with me. Now, the views on this program are not necessarily those of my advertisers, sponsors, places I work or do business with. They're purely my own, but I'm sharing them with you, so share your ideas with me. Write me on Twitter at Liberty House, LIBERTYHOUS, no E. Until next time, let's continue dreaming and working for a free and spiritually grounded society.